how people think they're playing the social media game, but really they're kind of being played by social media. People are addicted. People are being manipulated by the algorithm, by what it's going to show them, not only just in their feed, but in their comments as well. We're also looking into things like, how do you get followers? How do you get likes? All these vanity metrics and how that's evolved over the years.
The origin is not 10 years ago, but more 20 years ago with things that we saw on MySpace.com. With that is a lot of the archives of MySpace and a lot of the historically relevant captures of what actually happened there from the perspective of people who used it. For me, I think a lot of it comes back to MySpace and the fact that pretty early on, we equated having more friends on MySpace with being more popular. I introduced that concept in basically the first chapter, chapter 2 of my book, because I think it underpins everything else that I speak about.
At one point in time, it was, for me anyways, it was largely just the people who you actually knew, who would just kind of like interact with your space. And now it's gotten to this point where you're literally like crying for people who you wouldn't have known they existed if it weren't for something like Instagram. They wouldn't know you existed, right? Like they don't matter in the grand scheme of things. They're not your neighbor. They're not your friend. They're not, right? If you've ever been burned by a guru who sells you this one-size-fits-all marketing plan to save your business, then this conversation is for you. Because we are tired of being ball and chained to our social media accounts or email lists and not really understanding exactly what it means to show up for your business online. We're going to pull back the curtain specifically on social media. And we're going to be really unearthing some of the less desirable aspects that you need to know. And that's why I have Tim here today. He's going to tell us a little bit about himself, why this topic matters to him, and why it absolutely should matter to you. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Shauna. I'm so excited to be here on Marketing Rebels. My name is Tim O'Hearn, and I'm an author. I wrote the book Framed, A Villain's Perspective on Social Media, which was published in late February of this year. My book details parts of my life that involved growing up with the internet, becoming a programmer, so learning how to write software, and then profiting from breaking the rules on social media. And after running a business that profited so much from users and from these tendencies that are now very much ingrained with social media, I learned so much about consumer psychology and also about the push and pull between advertisers, platforms, and users as well. My book is an essay collection as much as it is a memoir, and it was a #1 bestseller in the category Social Aspects of the Internet on Amazon Kindle.
I absolutely love that. And just so everyone knows, I am reading this book. I am actively in the process of reading this book. I was hesitant to read the whole thing, though, because you all know me. I like to hear it from the horse's mouth. I like to hear it from the spring which it was born. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into some pretty touchy conversations around social media. And the first one that I love to touch on is this idea of how people think they're playing the social media game, but really they're kind of being played by social media, that they're being sucked into it. People are addicted. People are being manipulated by the algorithm, by what it's going to show them, not only just in their feed, but in their comments as well. We're also looking into things like, how do you get followers? How do you get likes? All these vanity metrics and how that's evolved over the years. So I'm not sure where you want to start with that because it's a big, big topic. But I'm just going to put the ball in your court, Tim, and ask you, okay, where do we start with this? Where is the crux of it that everyone who's joining us for this conversation here today needs to start thinking about now, or rather, 10 years ago? Like, where do we start?
There is a lot to cover here, but I would say that the origin is not 10 years ago, but more 20 years ago with things that we saw on MySpace.com. So MySpace was known as a place for friends, which for some reason, that tagline, a place for friends, has largely been wiped off the face of the internet. Nobody knows why, but with that is a lot of the archives of MySpace and a lot of the historically like relevant captures of what actually happened there from the perspective of people who used it, people like me. And when I was involved with my business on Instagram, where I was getting paid to get people more Instagram followers, this question arose very often. Why do we care so much? Of course, my customers cared. They were happy to bring out their credit cards and pay me. But the truth is that I cared too. And it was this very interesting introspection where I had to kind of peel back the layers and say, when was the first time that I felt that vanity metrics, followers, friends, or what have you, were a proxy for popularity, were a proxy for this type of like, social proof? For me, I think a lot of it comes back to MySpace and the fact that pretty early on, we equated having more friends on MySpace with being more popular. Then as time went on, that meant having more followers on Instagram meant you were more popular or more successful or more attractive or what have you. So I introduced that concept in basically the first chapter, chapter 2 of my book, because I think it underpins everything else that I speak about.
I remember MySpace. I remember posting songs. I remember downloading songs off of LimeWire illegally. Shh. And it was totally that, right? It was totally just the birth of going, oh, wow, like I'm so cool because people like what I'm posting or like what I'm sharing
Right.
or like me because of my banner I put on my space, right? Something to that effect. And it really shifts the way you think about how that's evolved because at one point in time it was, I mean, for me anyways, it was largely just the people who you actually knew who would just kind of like interact with your space. And now it's gotten to this point where you're literally like crying for people who you wouldn't have known they existed if it weren't for something like Instagram. They wouldn't know you existed, right? Like they don't matter in the grand scheme of things. They're not your neighbor. They're not your friend. They're not, right? But we've made it mean something so much more to us. And I think you're right to consider the introspective part of that. And then to consider the fact that people have already considered that. Those people have been paid to do market research, to do psychological studies, and to use those psychological studies to make sure that you keep caring, whether it truly matters or not. Tell me a little bit more about that and your role in helping people to get these followers, etc., while you were on that journey.
We started to care more and more because having more followers meant wider distribution for whatever you were posting. And as we went into the 2010s, we saw this. I don't want to say it was driven by reality TV, but we saw this kind of like personal obsession with self, and we found that social media was this venue in which many people could have a pronounced version of themselves, meaning they could seem more popular or feel more popular, and they had certain ways of getting this type of appreciation, this type of acclaim by way of likes, comments, follows, whatever. So as time went on, people sought these things out as validation, as a very clear connection to validation. But then also in the mid 2010s, we saw more businesses becoming popular online as well. And one thing that Instagram did, and which I credit Instagram with doing better than any platform that came before it, is that it integrated the experience for human users and for business users. So when you're looking through your feed, it was the first platform aside from Twitter that really, really intertwined business life, personal life, fan pages, whatever. And so it put it all in a feed where you could view things, as rapidly as possible. You could like things. And so it gave not only people like me or you a way to feel more popular and feel better about ourselves, it also gave this first wave or second wave of entrepreneurs a way to promote their products and services.
I think that's a really interesting thing you bring up, because the way we've shifted, and we've been shifting as consumers and as marketers or business owners, whether you're a small business owner or a large scale business owner, and I'm talking like Nike large scale, right? Like I'm talking about big, is that shift that you describe is the experience of being able to, like, if you're able to follow somebody, if you're able to follow your neighbor online, but you're also able to follow this prestigious business like a friend, it winds up making them kind of at the same level, which
Right.
feels even better. And that experience affects your emotions. And if you're emotive about something, then you're going to be easier to persuade to do something else, for better or worse. And so I can see where the draw would be for individuals and businesses alike to really dive into Instagram, and then of course radiating outward, because all the social media platforms started kind of mimicking this sort of trend. um, less trend, more way of being now, it seems, so that people can really feel immersed in their desired consumable, whatever it is. And this is interesting to me, because I've said it, if I've said it once, I've said it a million times. People are now more engaged with purchasing something when they feel connected to it. It's less like, oh, goodness, I just lost it. Less prestige. It's less, oh, I buy Nike. It's more like, oh, not, and I keep using Nike like it's a good thing, but let's just imagine a brand who really was devoted to a specific belief system, regardless of price, regardless of prestige, etc. If their belief system aligns with you on a more human level, you're more likely to purchase from them. That trend is very pronounced now and can be better leveraged both ways because of the trend you just said. I hope I articulated myself well there, but we'll see. What do you take from that, Tim? Take that and run.
We've definitely seen the emergence of likes, follows, comments, etc., as social currency, and social currency can be spent. I guess in this sense, we look back at MySpace and we see where if I found your profile, I might have commented on your picture and said, "Hey, Shauna, nice one," and then I would have ended that comment with PC for PC, and that was a primitive way of saying picture comment for picture comment, or entering into this implicit or explicit social contract with you to say, well, I made the effort, now you have to make the effort yourself. Why this is worth calling out is that if you did that today on Instagram, people would think you were a weirdo. And the reason that they would think that is because now this concept of PC for PC, as ridiculous as it sounds, is simply ingrained. It's a
Mm-hmm.
social code. And you have friends who comment on your pictures, I'm sure. And if you don't ever comment back, they probably talk about you. And they probably say, why doesn't Sean ever, what, she thinks she's better than me? And it's been this crazy evolution. We're back on MySpace. If you were famous, you still had to accept every friend request that you got. So there was
Right.
no waking up to 5,000 new followers one day. You woke up to 5,000 friend requests, and it was a mutual friending model, meaning you had to click every single one. And once you clicked them, all that person's stuff, bulletins, appeared in your feed. That was the mutual friending model. Now we've moved to something where we have followers and following. And now we have this thing where people are obsessed with their follower to following ratio on
Right.
Instagram as well. So while it placed businesses and individuals on the same plane, and it gave celebrities, to be fair, it made celebrities a lot more comfortable in their experience, and that they weren't didn't have to make this decision to accept friend requests. It also greatly increased the value of this social currency, because people then could look to the celebrities, see a very clear number as a summary of, okay, that's how much a Hollywood A-lister should have, and then they try to chase it themselves. And when you
Mm-hmm.
see somebody from down the block, somebody in your freshman dorm, somebody in your workplace, and they have a level of followers that might be approaching actual famous people, it's created this entire industry, and we call that industry influencers within digital marketing.
Right. Right. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love this concept of it being currency because, I mean, obviously, also it's been monetized. Because if you have a certain number of vanity metrics that come in each month or whatever, you do get a check from most of these places. So it just exacerbates that whole desirability of, hey, I need more likes, I need more followers, I need more XYZ, even if it doesn't really matter that much. Now, I want to kind of dive into too the kind of twisted side of that, because that's just logistics, right? Like that's just like this is how it evolved, right? But understanding that it's not always true, understanding the evolution of bots in the system and how we know that now, you know, they say they're trying to vet out bots. They say they're trying to vet out all this stuff, but I mean, are they? You tell me, because you are the expert in that space. You ran that shit. So like, what does that even mean to us everyday people?
I will start by saying this. For anybody viewing this, between 2017 and 2022, I ran a very large Instagram organic growth operation. That operation generated hundreds of millions of actions and millions of confirmed followers for my clients. It also generated different types of action blocks and tons of bans and restrictions for my accounts, just so we understand the scale that we're talking about here. When it comes to that space, we weren't even a top 10 player. The firm I've codenamed Shark Social without giving the real name. But the truth is that as time went on, we realized that for as much money as we were making, some of our competitors were making 10 times as much. And that's truth. That's been confirmed because Instagram sued some of them. And we can see the discovery and we can see how much money they actually pulled from their records. So it's very important to think about, what was I doing? Why was it so lucrative? And your point is, who has what to lose? Who has what to gain? Who has what to lose? And it's a very, very interesting balancing act. What we've seen on every platform is that if a platform owner, Meta, X, Facebook, whatever, it doesn't matter, if they can claim bot activity as real active users, investors will be really happy with that. If they know that 20% of their activity is bots and they say, hey, no, it's all real, that makes them look a lot better. And people actually invest money and analysts write reports based on this activity. So that's what makes you think, oh, whoa, well, like they have something to gain by having bots on the platform. Yes. But then the other side of it is that on the internet, especially since the early aughts, we've had problems with spam and disruption. So if those same bots are all trying to steal your password, or they're all spamming, or they're all running a propaganda campaign, that reflects very, very badly on the platform. And that causes many different, I would say, actors or different types of stakeholders to place pressure on those platforms to clean things up. So what's funny about what I did with organic Instagram growth is that I wasn't stealing your password. I wasn't selling you fake drugs. I wasn't selling guns. I wasn't harassing people. My systems were leaving what has been called the internet's most kind form of spam. So rather than me saying, hey, buy this, click this, do this, I was just saying, hey, Shauna, nice picture. And you would see that. It would be from a real looking account. It wouldn't be left 100 times on 100 different of your pictures. The general data backed answer here is that at a rate of about 10%, people like you would follow back. You would look at a comment from someone like me and say, hey, you know what? This person looks interesting. Let's click it. Oh, okay. Let's follow back. And that was the whole basis of the industry. It was under this guise of being organic, which it was not. It was driven by bots. But the point is that we weren't doing anything that was that bad in the grand scheme of all the awful things that could happen on social media. And for that reason, we had a good run of at least a couple years in which we felt we we were nowhere near the top priority of these platforms.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I mean, let's be real, the psychological rule of reciprocity is such that someone would follow you back or like some of your things, or etc. And in fact, this is something that I strongly encourage people to do, is to actually be active. It's social media for a reason. You know, if you're going to actually use it, then be social on it, but be genuine about it. So with the way you ran it with the bots and automation, that was maybe less genuine, putting it lightly.
Right.
But it's the same kind of idea. And I think it's also really funny that it's just PC for PC over
Right.
and over again.
Right.
I love that. I love that tie-in so much. Now let's lean over to just the idea behind, ooh, pardon, the idea behind algorithms. Let's talk about algorithms for a minute. Give me your 2 cents on. I'm going to say it broadly and see where you take it, because I just, for everyone who's joining us for this conversation, I just need you to know that if you ever get a chance to pick Tim's brain, do it, because like I'm going to say algorithms, and you and I both know. Actually, in fact, I'm going to tell you all, we all know algorithms is a big nut to crack. So I'm just going to place it here. Algorithms. Tim, go. Tell me about it.
Thank you for that. In my book, I wrote that many people see algorithm as a dirty word, and they'll even like they'll give it human qualities. So they'll like anthropomorphize it, and they'll say,
Yeah.
the algorithm knows me so well. I hate the algorithm. And that's been a fairly recent feeling. And the way the word has advanced, an algorithm is really just a repeatable set of instructions. So I make the case in my book, I don't need to give you a block of code to show you what an algorithm is. I could just say, open the fridge. Open the fridge is an algorithm, right? And if you add extra stuff like, if the fridge is closed, open the fridge. If I need a drink and the fridge is closed, open the drink. You know, you can just add on logic, and that's an algorithm. And of course, we like to use computer code to do this in the software space. And then we have more advanced algorithms that, of course, blend different software systems over a network, and including different hardware systems, out of scope for now. What I talk about in my book is algorithms and truth, and how a lot of the algorithms we see, specifically in information retrieval, can be co-opted to completely fool us, especially people who are from older generations. Meaning, we've, we have boomers now on all social media sites. We have even generations beyond that, and we have younger generations too who are coming up in a totally different time. One thing that I realized while writing Framed was that we've called these feeds news feeds. And in many cases, I think we've kind of bastardized what it meant to be a newscaster in the mid 20th century in the United States, where news was heralded, it was so respected, it was ethical, and most of all, it was true. Now we have news feeds, and a lot of people log on expecting that what they see is just as true as the news would have been from a primary news source. And the issue is that it's largely not. It's just an aggregation, and it's not tuned as much for truth as much as it is tuned for engagement. So even though Google search is still somewhat pure, it's easily manipulated, but it's still somewhat pure. When you actually see a news feed on a social media site, it's not showing you the most important news of that day. It's actually showing you things that this algorithm has calculated you or people like you will engage with more. And I think that's very, very important, because there are tons of people out there who are still writing things like, here's how to beat the algorithm. Here's how to take advantage of the algorithm. And the truth is that what is happening in the feed is so complicated that it cannot be understood in plain English. And there's not one single person at one of these firms, including the AI experts, who could tell you why you were shown a certain piece of content precisely. Now, we can reason through it, but it would take some math and statistics. But that's the point, is that they've gotten very, very complicated. And this is an outgrowth of early 2000s algorithms. One example I give in, I think, chapter 4 in my book is the death clock. You used to be able to log onto a website called thedeathclock.com, enter your birth date, enter certain things like, oh, do you smoke, whatever, and it would calculate a date at which it thought you would die. Hopefully that date was in the future. But the point is that that was just a birth date based calculation. And those same algorithms are used by actuaries in life expectancy tables before they give you certain rates, right, for insurance and whatnot. So we take this idea of an algorithm. It used to be kind of simple, almost a novelty, and it's grown into something that almost nobody understands.
Perfect. See what I tell you all? It's perfect. This is the thing. You've got people who, well, I'm going to put it out there. I'm very much anti-guru. I have always been anti-guru. If somebody's going to try to put you into a box, I'm going to fight them. Gloves are off, okay? Elbows up. I'm Canadian. We talked about Americans, but like, let's be real. I'm just like, here, guys, it doesn't work that way. You can't just be like, hey man, I want to go viral. It doesn't, you can't do that. That's not the way it works. And this is coming from, pulling back the veil, pulling back the curtains, because truly, even the veil you can kind of see through. No, listen, it's more than that. You are being shielded from so much more, not just by, like, intentionally by the people who create the systems that they're trying to put curtains in front of, but also just simply by the complexity of it all. The fact that there are so many cogs in place, and that when you're accessing the internet and the various aspects of the internet and social media, whichever platform you're on, you're touching so many parts of those cogs. There's no way for one person in one instance to figure out what exactly the thing is that will make you go viral or that caused you to see one specific thing. It's way bigger than that. And I just want, and I'm saying that, and I'm saying that with so much bigger, because I need you to take the pressure off yourselves, everyone who's here today. Please just take the pressure off yourselves, okay? We're done. We're not doing that anymore. Everyone, no more pressure on this whole marketing baloney, okay? We're marketing rebels. We're doing it our way, and we're doing it in a way that feels good and works. It's both, right? So I love that. Thank you, Tim, because that really puts things into perspective. Okay. Next thing that I need to bring up, because the algorithm plays into this, because the algorithm really, because it's showing you what they think you will engage with. And again, I'm personifying it as well, them, whatever.
Sure.
But it's coming into your feed. You'll engage with this for sure because of all the mess that's behind. You're going to engage with this. You're going to like this. We are very endorphin-driven people. People just are, right? We want to get that hit of dopamine. We're here for it. And when it becomes something that, like, you really crave, that is an addiction. And your feed is made to do that, regardless of the platform you're on. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and argue that many simply websites that are designed today, like, they don't even need to be a social media platform. Many websites are very specifically designed to keep you there, or at least to keep you in that world, right? That's part of what I get paid to do when I'm helping people with their copywriting, right? We've done the research. We figure out what exactly do we need to say and how do we need to say it and in what order to get people to take a certain action. And with regards to social media, it's their action is to keep you on the platform, to keep you hooked. A lot of the people who are joining us for this conversation don't want to be ball and chained anymore. We want to unplug. We want to live our life, but we also want to achieve success through our digital marketing efforts. So how do we conceptualize that? Where are we placed in that conversation, and how do we navigate that?
It's an uncomfortable conversation to have because it requires admitting to things that haven't really been admitted at all levels. So it's kind of like we're discovering that smoking is addicting, but big tobacco is still telling us that it's not. Of course, in 2025, we know that that itself is not true. But when it comes to harmful usage of cell phones specifically, social media, and other types of design elements that we see in everything from video games with gambling elements, all the way through just random websites that are trying to steal your attention, it's very, very difficult. And for a lot of reasons. One is that a lot of people don't really remember what life was like before we had these things. In my book, I tried very, very hard in a chapter that I rewrote probably twice called screen grabbing. And I propose screen grabbing as this corruption of a term that we know as a screenshot or taking a capture of your screen. And my point is that our screens have come to capture us. And how did they do this? The hypothesis that I provide is that many of the aspects of addicting video games were then ported over to our mobile devices. So many of the things, like we call it infinite scroll. Okay, you're in a feed, you scroll, the content pretty much never runs out. People don't realize that the concept of an open world video game with no loading animations predated any type of infinite scroll on a cell phone.
Right.
And when that was introduced to cell phones, it was crazy. When it was introduced to video games, it was this unbelievable innovation. It was an unbelievable innovation, and it caused people to be more immersed and ultimately more addicted. So I take many of these different things. I take aspects of hardcore video, like online play in first-person shooter games. I take some aspects of open world gaming. I even take things that were seen in early versions of Super Mario, as far as when you go through the level, it's not a linear progression. It's kind of easy, then it's kind of hard, whatever. But the point is that when you're playing Mario, you never get slain on the first step, right? It's this interesting, you get hit with dopamine because it's like solving a puzzle and you're totally in control of the actor. We can apply these same graphs and these same concepts of motion and progression and achievement to earning social media metrics, perhaps to an even greater extent today. So that's one thing that we have to admit, or we have to think for each person, how did we get here? If you don't remember what life was like, it was actually pretty wonderful before we had this. Now we're kind of stuck because your phone with social media apps is one of the most efficient ways to get dopamine. And it's not even close, right? So that's kind of how I start thinking about it. And then, of course, the software implications are quite vast.
So now this is just this is purely your opinion that I'm leading off of now, because you've given us the stats, you've given us the data, the real, this is where it came from, this is why we love it so much. And I say love it with a tinge of, it's that love hate, right? We love the dopamine, but do we love that it takes us away from all of this? No, plain and simple for me. Absolutely not. In fact, there was a time I went over to my brother-in-law's house, and he had just gotten this new game at the time, Skyrim. Ooh, Skyrim, right? And I'm a geek. Like, I love fantasy. I love sci-fi. I love the idea that I could create my own character and go on this adventure that never ends. I can explore this world that has magical mushrooms and werewolves and all these things. Okay, cool. So I start playing it. I was like, I'm having a good time. I'm visiting. Got to the point where I got killed. I was doing good. I got to a point, though, where I accidentally stole something from some lady's house, and the whole village started chasing me, and they killed me. I did not realize that 3 hours had passed. And that was a really important time. Honestly, I've said this story to many friends. I don't think I've ever said it here. 3 hours. And I thought I was visiting. I thought I was enjoying my time with my brother and sister-in-law, my husband, and it was time to go. Like, it broke my heart. Like, it really did. It broke my heart. And now, and listen, I grew up, I loved gaming. I love Zelda. I love Nintendo, right? I was on board when you're talking about Mario. Yes, I remember that as a kid. But I don't play today. I don't start up my Wii or whatever. I don't follow the Triforce. I'm not going to go and do that anymore, because I have kids. I have friends. I have a husband. And it is a choice daily that I make not to play video games, I have my phone here. Yeah, of course I have my phone here. I had to make sure that I was emailing you while I was doing this as business, but it's a choice that I make to do this for business. I'm not going on here and playing video games. I'm not playing Candy Crush or whatever the new thing is, right? inconsequential. And so the reason I'm saying all of this is because I think it's a really important concept to realize how addicting this is, and to take your willpower and stretch it to allow yourself to know that the dopamine you're getting here is the shit stuff. Like, that's not good booze. My grandparents used to say this story all the time when the kids would drink their water or their milk, and they do one of those. Kids do that. And my grandfather would say, "Ooh, is that good booze?" Of course, that's not appropriate. I know. Calm down. All these Karens out there are going, "You shouldn't say that to a kid." Nah, it was hilarious. That's not the good booze. That's the bottom shelf shit. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You go out there and you experience life with the people you love, doing the things that you love. I am a portrait artist. I love doing portraits. I love painting. I love touching grass. I love gardening. That's the good booze. That's the stuff that doesn't just like instant hit. That's the stuff that fills your soul. And so being able to stretch your willpower, because it can be hard. It's fun to do the easy stuff because it's quick, but it doesn't last. It's not the good booze. I don't know if that's an appropriate thing to say. Now that I've said it like 8 times, now I'm starting to go, wait a minute. I think you understand. So, okay, now that you understand where I'm coming from a human perspective, I want to know your opinion about that. Like, is it truly just a willpower stretch that people need to make an executive choice? Or do you think there's more to that?
It's a really important connection to draw between the emotions that we seek and the dopamine that we seek, and finding that there's a shortcut to much of it on our phone or on our gaming rig. The difference between video games and social media experiences, it would surprise people, but it's actually been admitted from people at like child advocacy centers. The director of one said that, the reason that so many kids or teenagers or young adults, whatever, have such a difficult time online is because interactions on the internet mirror the emotions of the real world. And this is something I address in Framed, because when we think about video games, we primarily think about escapism. Then we think about these two polar emotions, which is just crazy excitement, ecstasy, or rage. And we can go through the last 20 years of gaming, and that's pretty much the spectrum. Okay, you get a good story in there and you feel some other emotions, but it's either like you're throwing a controller across the room or you're just so excited because you got a headshot. What's unique about social media is that it gives us those. It gives us the equivalent of a headshot or getting killed, but it gives us the rest of the spectrum as well, because it introduces real life connections, many of them perhaps romantic in nature, and it also gives us entertainment. So things that are like funny and surprising and interesting, and just things that even the best games maybe can't give us at a tap. Maybe it takes a while longer to get there. So it's interesting you bring up Skyrim, because most people would say that it is a rewarding game in that your 10 minutes versus your 10 hours versus your 10 days experience, each one is rewarding in its own way. But to your point now with social media, your 10 minutes to 10 hours to 10 days that you spend in your game world, you find that it's actually quite shallow, and really nothing builds upon the previous thing. And it becomes this like endless cycle of seeking something that's no longer there. So that's really important. And thinking about our role in abstaining from it and what role it can play is really, really important. It's something where I could have taken this chapter and Framed, screen grabbing, and I could have written an entire book just about that, because it's really important and it matters a lot to me. But ultimately, my recommendation is that let's focus on keeping kids away from cell phones and away from games with gambling elements. Beyond that, we're kind of on our own, right? It's like, okay, use like an app to control your screen time and things like that. It's really, really difficult to look at it, especially as a business owner who must conduct a business on the internet and understand what's useful, what's not. Am I just playing the same game as everyone else? And I'm calling it gathering competitive intelligence. I call this by a number of names, but I also introduced the concept of the expertise trap. in my book. And it's this idea that it's so easy to just look something up and then watch a video and then find an influencer and then go to sleep and then repeat the same thing the next day. And before you know it, you haven't actually begun working on that hobby. And some of the examples I give are, I would say, as fundamental or foundational as painting, right? You could watch people paint all day. You could look up reviews on the best set of paints and an easel and stuff. But the point is that eventually you have to, dip the brush in and get going. And a lot of people don't ever get past that because of this, you would call it this like mental masturbation, where they're just like getting good enough feedback because they're following the influencers. Oh, hey, let's paint. And that's why we now have an entire industry of people who simply watch other people do things. And we call that streaming. It's not just video games. There are painters and other artists on that too. I think that speaks to how much has gone wrong over the last decade.
It kind of breaks my heart. Actually, just think that I know that sounds dramatic. I know I like totally understand that sounds dramatic. But as a painter, and the fact that you use that as an example, and I know there's so many different examples, but you use painting as such a good example. There's a reason why art therapy exists. So like it really breaks my heart to know that somebody is using this addiction to scratch an itch that can never feel soothed when they could just dip the paintbrush in the paint, right? And it does break my heart. So just from an emotive point of view, for anybody who's joining us here who's like, oh shit, I might have a problem, because I get it. Listen, I can go down rabbit holes. MCU, the Marvel Universe, like I am here for it, like all day and every day. And I went down a rabbit hole the other day. I spent like 20 minutes, which for some people is a lot. For some people, it isn't. For me, it's quite a long time. And it was just, they were giving me like behind the scenes, like here are the Easter eggs, right? Here's something you may have missed in this. And I love that stuff, but I like finding it, right? Like I like finding it and then talking to my husband about it and then figuring things out. But it was giving me back to back to back. Oh, Tom Holland. Oh my gosh. I was all over it for 20 minutes until I went, whoa, off, plug it in, walk away, because you really have to give yourself the shake.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was able to go and do Legos with my kids, which was, by the way, amazing. I made a pirate ship, if you wanted to know. So yeah, like I just, let's feel the feels for a minute. Anybody who's here going, oh shoot, or I know somebody who, or I'd really like to unplug and I need more information, please reach out. If you would like more information on how to market in a way that doesn't require you to be ball and chained to your phone or your computer, because I'm all about lifestyle entrepreneurship and I want to make sure that you're able to run a successful business without feeling like you always have to be plugged in. What kind of drain is that to your whole existence? We just gave the example, so I will not kick a dead horse. Now I've got a list here of things that I wanted to make sure that I talked to you about, Tim. And one of them I feel like we kind of sort of talked about, but I want to hear more about that gray area, which is another one of your chapters, that whole gray area of social media growth. And tell me more about the punishment side of things. Because I think that's something that we need to know as entrepreneurs.
One chapter that took me a very long time to write ended up being titled Punishing Crime. And it's really a nod to Dostoevsky and the novel Crime and Punishment, but it's also a commentary on this wide gap between things that are just kind of like unethical and things that are actually illegal. I've been misrepresented as this is a guy who broke the law and hacked things. Not really true. The point is that when we're talking about breaking things, we're talking about breaking the terms of service of private businesses. So in the real world, you can go to a private business, you can annoy people, and you can get banned. We call that being trespassed. There's a legal way to do that in the United States. And then if you return after being trespassed, then you can be charged with crimes. I would say that's somewhat related to what happens actually on the social media platforms, which is that they reserve the right to do whatever they want, right? They could ban you. They could ban your family. They could make it so that you never can access the website ever again, for the most part. And then they can define consequences for if you keep returning. And in my case, if you keep returning to extract further value, meaning, am I running a bot? Am I mining data, then selling the data? What am I doing, right? So I introduced this spectrum, which we've used a lot of these like special words to describe what is dishonest, bad behavior, but we'll never describe it as like, I'm a really bad guy. So the term we use is black hat marketing. And we call it black hat marketing because it's not necessarily illegal, but you're violating the terms of one or multiple service providers. So originally it was Google. If you used black hat techniques for search engine optimization, it meant you were just throwing a bunch of keywords on your website. It meant that you were using these like backlinking services, which could have fooled PageRank. And in the marketing sense, it meant you were using a service like mine to get followers who really didn't want to follow you or wouldn't have found you if you weren't running automation services anyway. In this chapter, Punishing Crime, I give many different examples of where platforms were pitted against service providers, or where platforms themselves were pitted against other platforms, and kind of what the legal precedents coming out of them were. And you're thinking to yourself, dude, you already said you broke the rules. Why do we need to talk about the court cases? What I'm saying here is that a lot of the things that made it so that I was breaking the rules or gave teeth to the enforcement were established by some of these court cases. For example, a company called HiQ Labs created many fake accounts on LinkedIn. They then used those accounts to scrape, meaning continually return to and take the data from all employees of any company that was a client of theirs. The service they provided to their clients was they would reveal when one of the client's employees updated their LinkedIns. As you know, when you make an update to LinkedIn, you have a button and you can choose, hey, maybe I'll share this with my network. Maybe I won't. When is the time where you don't want to share something with your network? When you're preparing to look for another job while still employed by someone else. So we would all say that HiQ's business was brilliant because it was adjacent to the platform, it depended on the platform. But of course, LinkedIn could never go on the record and say, oh yeah, we support businesses that reveal the fact that you're about to leave your employer. If backed by enough statistical evidence, of course we could come up with an algorithm to determine which employees were looking for work. And there are tons of ways you could then take advantage of those same employees as an employer. So that is one of my favorite legal cases because it went through many different court systems, but it just goes to show how it wasn't necessarily bad, but of course you and I could reason through the moral aspect, the ethical part of it, and also what rights each one of these private businesses had.
Absolutely. That gives me so much ick. Like, that's so bad. It really is. Like, just the idea that, oh, that person might have one foot out the door, so let's give a reason to fire them, or let's manipulate the situation to make them stay, or like that just sounds so terrible. Oh my, and I mean, who knows if that happened? We don't know. It's all speculation at this point with the degree of knowledge that I have based on those court cases, but like, getting up in my feels. It's just wrong, right? Like, I'm a very morally and ethically sound person, I think, and that just does not sound right. So I also have feelings about this, something I call misleading marketing, which I feel like kind of leans towards this, and I want to hear your opinion on it. This is where you've got somebody who will tell you, oh, I achieved this astronomical success in this very short period of time, and so I can help you to do the same. What they don't, and maybe they did, okay, like I can't tell you whether they did or not. Some people like to give receipts, the people who post like their income and shit. Like, I'm not on board. I don't know, but maybe they did achieve that. Let's just say I'm going to give them kudos. Yeah, sure. In 30 days, you made $50,000. I don't freaking know. But they didn't tell you that 10 years previously they declared bankruptcy and had been scraping pennies all the way up until this miraculous time. Like, they don't tell you that part, right? They don't tell you all this stuff that they had to go through and what they had to invest in and who they had to get on board in order to do all this successful stuff. And so you're thinking, oh yeah, I sign on today, 30 days later, I'm going to get this money, because that's what they imply. And there are a lot of different, like, I did a lot of philosophy courses, and there are things like lying by omission, etc. It's all lying in the end, and which is why I call it misleading marketing, and I don't like it. What's your opinion on that, based on what you just told me? Like, there's a lot of nuances in that whole world.
There is considerable nuance, and I will have to give HiQ Labs some credit in that I think anyone who purchased that service knew exactly what they were purchasing, and then it was up to them to decide the ethics of it. Frankly, I feel that it probably was ethically, it was questionable, but there are worse things that have been done, right? Because the truth is that as an employee, I've also done my own types of investigations to determine certain things about my coworkers, which in some cases were correct, such as like, why in December does this guy have LinkedIn Premium all of a sudden? And especially as a software engineer, it's like, why does this guy have LinkedIn Premium, right? Like, oh, and then he's gone 3 months later. So it's just automating, and it's giving kind of this unfair advantage to people who don't have access to automation solutions.
Right.
When we get to more of the marketing realm in general, and you talk about these gurus, these lies by omission, it's very, very difficult because there's just so much lying. It's like everything is a lie or like a marketing tactic, especially today, that I even find myself getting fooled sometimes. I talk about being in the organic growth industry. That sounds way better than the fake follower boosting industry. But the truth is that nothing we were doing was organic. It was all controlled by bots. So maybe the likes we were getting in return, hopefully, were organic, but they weren't generated by human hands. So it wasn't really organic growth at all. So, in our case,
you were greenwashing your services.
right. Yeah, absolutely. And when, even sometimes people would say, are you compliant with Instagram's terms and conditions? Well, no, we weren't, but we had a lot of different ways of talking about it. It's like, are you compliant with Stripe, the payment processor? And the truth is that we had only been grandfathered in because after some point in 2018, Stripe actually banned any businesses in the digital follower space. And that's still a banned type of business on Stripe today. So yeah, even for me, why I'm saying, I'm the villain or was the villain is that almost everybody who existed in this space had to get comfortable with lying to people and bending the truth and accepting the fact that sometimes customers would really, really feel like they got screwed. And it's just unfortunate because it's given me this very cynical take where I wrote a book. Okay, it's kind of this act of penance. I can say that I'm definitely doing significantly more help today than probably harm that I ever did. But the truth is that I'm now so cynical whenever I see anything on the internet, there's always this idea that something that I'm being taken advantage of somehow. And it's because things have gotten so much more advanced. And because with more competition, you find that in any perfect system, those who then cheat get some meager advantage there. So yeah, there's considerable nuance, and I could talk about this for probably another hour.
Yeah, I believe it wholeheartedly. And I mean, it of course touches on, since we've been really hunkering down on Instagram, it really touches on this idea of like highlight reels, right? Highlight marketing, what's going on the surface without really revealing the back and like back of house. So, okay, you're right. You're right. We could have 100% talk about this for at least another hour. And we're not going to. We're going to just simply put it to a close without Shauna getting all up in her feels again, because I will, because there's so much here that irks me. And this is why we're marketing rebels. This is why we approach this from a different point of view, because we want to unearth these unfair, inequitable practices to the best of our ability, or at least acknowledge that they exist, even if they are behind curtains, so that we can give ourselves peace as we navigate this world in the most ethical way possible, while trying to make the world a better place. We're breaking business barriers. We're trying to make sure that everybody has equal access to information to the best of our ability, which is, I'm not gonna go there. I'm gonna go all conspiracy theory on you if I go there. But right, this is why we're here. We're breaking this mold, and we've talked about a lot. So, out of all that we've talked about, and all of the ridiculous amounts that we could talk about, I would like to give you a moment to think about what is the one takeaway, action step, further thought, insight that you want everyone joining us today to take home with and do something with. I want you to think about that. And I know that it's a big question. I know that goodness gracious, I just asked you to take infinity and stretch it out into one straight line. So I'll give you a moment. And in the meantime, I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to thank all of you for being a part of this and for sticking around until this moment, and for being open to exploring this world, how we can work together to still grow our businesses and be joyful and abundant and financially, right now. I want everybody to just join me in that amazing space of togetherness. And also remember that these conversations happen every week. Every single week, we're diving into the nuances of what does it mean to market in this crazy world. So hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, ask a question, tell me what else you want to hear about. I have a surprising amount of people who want to talk to you about whatever it is comes to mind. So let's do that. Now, I hope you've come up with the thing that you want to say. I'm kind of like, is he ready? Oh, okay. The mic is yours, my friend. Tell the people what they need to hear.
The internet was once an amazing place. Today, it's not. The opportunity afforded to us in the information age can still be grasped, but the ease in which we can grasp it is significantly dissipated. I wrote Framed because I wanted to tell a story about how I broke the rules on social media and how I made hundreds of thousands of dollars while doing it. But while writing the book, the thing I kept coming back to, and the reason I kept reshuffling the chapters, was because I couldn't take my mind off how wonderful it was to grow up with the internet in the late 90s and early 2000s, before things became so commercialized and ruined by what I call late stage capitalism. If you're someone who wonders what the internet was or what the internet could be, Framed is one of the best ways that you can get closer to that truth. You can see from the perspective of someone who did it, and someone who approached the good, the bad, and the really, really ugly, and then wrote about it. I'm the only person who's covered these things in a book, and I'm someone who's really lays bare his life. So anybody looking to read more can find Framed on Amazon. The audiobook is coming later this summer, and it's really written for people like me and people totally different from me, people who want to learn how they can make the absolute most of using the internet. But a lot of that comes with taking the same cynical mindset as me and going way, way beyond what you see the internet as and what you see the gurus and the prophets and the influencers telling you today. It's about unraveling that and approaching it from the perspective of someone who's been doing this for more than 20 years. So my name is Tim O'Hearn, and I really, really appreciate being here on Marketing Rebels.
Thank you so much, Tim. And I feel it. I feel it so deeply. And I said at the beginning that I hadn't read the entire book. It's actually sitting on, I have a beautiful piano next to my reading chair, and it's sitting on my piano. And now I'm just like, well, obviously that's what I'm doing after this, because I've got to dive deeper, because I know that we have just barely scratched the surface. So all of you, if you haven't already, hop over there, grab the book, take a deep dive, and ask some questions. Ask the important questions. And in fact, you may find some of the answers you've been looking for in the book anyways. So that'll lead to more questions, but at least it'll lead to more insights too. So you can join us on this self-discovery. You can join us to explore more conversations around what does it look like to show up on the internet, on social media, in a way that's ethical, and in a way that actually works for you and your business and your life. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Thanks again, Tim. Chat soon.